Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about another 90s horror movie. This time we're taking it to 1998 and we're going to be talking about Urban Legend. After the success of Scream, there were a lot of movies in the 90s that tried to really copy that formula that made the slasher genre so distinct and so special. That movie really set standards for a lot of other horror movies, and this movie could potentially fall into that category of the Scream copycats. However, I was actually really pleasantly surprised by this movie and I'm really excited to talk about it today. But before I get into my thoughts on Urban Legend, let me know what you all think about this movie down below if you've seen it. Without further ado, let's start talking about Urban Legend. A college campus is plagued by a vicious serial killer murdering students in ways that correspond to various urban legends. I just want to say that the concept of this movie is really cool and unique. Like I said, this movie could potentially fall into the 90s horror, Scream type movie. Like, you know, there's a lot of 90s movies like this, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. But I actually think that this one was a little bit refreshing and very different in the killer's motives and how it kind of tied everything together. I thought it was really cool. I thought the whole urban legend aspect of it in a way was somehow relatable to its audience, even if it wasn't 100% relatable to me. I don't know too many things about urban legends, but they talk about some stuff like Bloody Mary, and that's like just stuff that you hear about growing up. And I think it's cool that this movie kind of brought all those urban legends and a lot of more obscure ones that I personally didn't know about to life in this movie, and it used it as the serial killer's way of doing things. And yeah, I think it's really cool. I honestly really was very surprised by the concept of this and also how it was executed, because there's a lot of twists and turns in this movie, and the movie does something that I think is really awesome where it kind of leads you believing something, but then the narrative completely changes, or when you think you know what's happening, something's entirely going to change. And it happens a lot towards the third act. It makes it a lot of fun, and I thought this movie the entire way through was super engaging. That really got me super engaging and got me at the edge of my seat. Like, a lot of moments I was like, oh my god, this is what's gonna happen, and it's a lot of fun. There is a lot of predictable stuff still. It is a slasher. You know that most of these characters are here to die, essentially. You know, when they go on the woods or when they leave their friends, you know they're gone. You just know it. But I will say that what made up for that was that the kills were actually pretty good. They tied back to the urban legends, but some of them were pretty twisted, like extremely twisted. And most of the kills weren't just like, okay, you die and that's it. It was a lot of chasing around and getting other characters to kind of play into the killer's game, if that makes sense, which I thought was a lot of fun for the movie to not make it more of like a boring type of slasher. But we have a final girl, and I thought she was very cool to hang around with the entire movie. She's not my favorite final girl or my favorite character in a horror movie ever, but I like that they sort of gave her a little bit of depth. A lot of these characters are very basic, and it goes back to playing back to the Scream-esque slasher. A lot of them are very just the typical characters you would have in a college movie or in one of these school college movies, especially in a horror movie. You have the annoying character, the more like nerdy character, the cool girl, the not so cool girl, just like regular stuff that, you know, these tropes that happen in a lot of these movies. And although the characters are pretty basic and there's not that sense of like friendship that I really like in other types of slashers, I think this movie still did it pretty well, and I think it's because our lead character is really interesting to hang around with and you're trying to really figure out the mystery with her, and it's really frustrating when nobody believes her, but you're like, girl, I got you. I know you know something's wrong, and I know something's wrong. Also want to talk about the opening and ending. Won't give any spoilers since they're both pretty shocking scenes in my opinion, but really loved the way this movie opened. It kind of does this thing a lot where it plays with the horror genre and kind of uses that as an advantage to advance the plot. So the audience is like, we've seen horror movies before, we know what's gonna happen, and the movie's like, no, you don't know what's gonna happen because this isn't your typical horror movie. And the opening did that, and the ending too. You know, I like the ending. It's a little bit out there, I would say, but I like the way it ended. But the opening, I think it was a really great opening. I was very shocked with everything. I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And it was cool. I think it started the movie with very high stakes, I would say. Now, the movie does have some pacing issues, I would say. Although I was engaged from start to finish, I do think it starts dragging a little bit towards the second half of the movie. Really like the third act and the climax, but a little bit before that, I think it just drags a little bit, and they should have probably cut off maybe like 15-20 minutes off it. There's also some parts in the story where they question who the killer could be, and it also slows the movie down a little bit for me. I understand why they did it. I mean, it was very intriguing to me at the same time, trying to figure out the pieces as the characters were doing so, but just a couple of pacing issues here and there that I thought just brought the movie down a little bit for me. I also really like how the script would give us information, and it would kind of help us piece the pieces together later on. Like, they tell us this information and you really don't know what it's gonna mean in the grand scheme of things. Honestly, I didn't think it would mean anything, and then it does mean something, and it kind of ties it back to what we know and the past and stuff like that. And it was really cool, kind of like a full circle moment, and you kind of understand where all the characters play in this. And also, I'm just gonna say, this was a very cool killer reveal. Really surprised me, actually. I thought it was one character the entire time, and it wasn't. Like, I'm like, I think it's this character, and it really wasn't that character at all, and I was very shocked with just how it ultimately ended up being. But now, like, thinking back in the movie, I can totally see how it's that character and stuff like that. So it's one of those movies, I love these type of movies where you're trying to guess who the killer is the entire time. That's why Scream is literally my favorite movie of all time, and I think this movie was really a lot of fun. Like, I've never really heard much about this movie, and 90s slashers sometimes get a bad rep, but I think this was really good. I think it was very creative, had me engaged from beginning to end, had a lot of surprising moments, and just I was engaged the entire way through, and I had a really good time with this movie. So I highly recommend watching Urban Legend if you've never seen it, because this movie's a ton of fun, and I think this would be a lot of fun watching it with friends, actually. I don't know, I like watching slashers with friends because it's kind of like you're all guessing who it is and stuff. So yeah, you guys should definitely do that. But if you've seen Urban Legend and you haven't let me know what you think about it, please make sure to comment it before you go so that we can talk about the movie down below and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching today's review of Urban Legend, and I'll have a lot of more 90s horror movie reviews coming in these couple of days. The 90s, honestly, I think is kind of overlooked era for horror. I think there's a lot of cool 90s stuff happening in movies in general, but horror especially was a very interesting time, so excited to keep watching some 90s horror if you guys are excited for those videos too. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching today's review, and I'll make sure to see you all in the next one. Bye everyone!